Hello my dear friends, you're in the military with summary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And this video we're going to talk first of all about the city of Pokrovsk and the Pokrovsk Cauldron, because exactly from this area we are getting the most important and the most interesting updates. So first of all, I would like to remind you the statement that was made yesterday by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation. Yesterday they said that the Russian Minister of Defense has received an order from the Supreme Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Federation to ensure an independent passage for foreign journalists, including Ukrainian ones, who request access to the Ukrainian Armed Forces Command to visit the areas where Ukrainian troops are encircled in Krasnoarmeysk, and this is the city of Pokrovsk, Dmitrov, and Kupiansk. The Russian command is prepared to cease hostilities in these areas for 5-6 hours if necessary. So the Russians yesterday proposed to Ukrainian side to stop clashes in this area with the purpose to allow journalists to enter this territory, with the purpose to see with their own eyes what is happening right now on the territory of the Pokrovsk agglomeration, the territory of the Pokrovsk Cauldron. But yesterday in the evening, the Ukrainian side rejected. They said that they're not going to allow anybody to go there. Frankly, I do not recommend that any reporters trust any of Putin's proposals for corridors in the war zone. I saw firsthand how such proposals play out on August 29, 2014 in Ilovaisk. Putin's goal only is to prolong the war, and he has never kept any of his ceasefire pledges. Do not assist him in justifying his crimes through Russian provocations against journalists. So Zelensky rejected this proposal. He didn't reject this proposal himself personally, neither was rejected by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, but as we can see, we have official comments. Some authorities commented the situation. Furthermore, today the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation made their own statement regarding rejection from Ukrainian side. They said that Ukrainians are just trying to hide losses of their forces and to hide the real situation on the ground. Because obviously we understand, if everything that the Russians are saying are telling us is the truth, and that there are thousands of Ukrainians that were encircled, and of course if journalists entered this territory, these people would ask their families, their friends, their parents to meet, they would ask them for meetings, they will ask them for protest, with the purpose to force Zelensky to start some negotiation process. You know that the formula is very simple. I don't know why Zelensky doesn't want to accept this proposal, because I would like to remind you that several days ago, Zelensky, when he was talking about clashes around the settlement of Pokrovsk, he stated that as a result of Ukrainian counter-offensive operation, Ukrainians managed to capture up to 2,000 Russian soldiers. So Zelensky stated that Russians were encircled and captured around the settlements of Kucherov Yar, Zoltoy Kolodец, so in the area of Russian breakthrough. So if you ask my opinion, I see that this is a great formula. Ukraine can return these 2,000 Russian soldiers, and Russia can return or allow, let's say, to escape these cauldrons the same amount of soldiers. So it will be equal and it will be fair. But for some reason Zelensky doesn't want anything like this. He continue holding his positions. He is continue forcing commanders of the armed forces of Ukraine to let's say to counterattack with the purpose to unblock the settlement. But as we can see, as for now, the Ukrainians haven't managed to achieve anything. Anyway, let's discuss the situation on the ground, and as you can see, during the previous 12 hours, we received additional changes on the ground. So this is the situation, for example, by the end of the 30th of October of 2025, the Russians entered the city of Mirnograd from the east. The Russians managed to take under control the Zaporozhsk micro-district, and the Russians improved their position significantly to the north of the railways. And this morning, by the beginning of the 31st of October, we got additional details about the situation. So let's discuss everything in details, and as you can see, the biggest number of updates are coming exactly from the city of Pokrovsk. So today, more precisely during the previous nights, Ukrainian sources published several videos where we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians on the territory of the settlements of Rih and on the territory of the settlement by the name of Gnatovka. In this video, we can see Ukrainians attacking Russians with FPV drones, Cauldrons. There are lots of episodes in this video, and the most important one is this one. Here we can see a building that was attacked by Ukrainians, and this is exactly the building that was attacked by Ukrainian forces. So based on this video and based on the video that was published in the area of the settlement by the name of Gnatovka, we have adjusted the map. So once again, this is the situation by the end of the 30th of October, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 31st of October. Once again, we colored both villages almost on the complete Russian control, but we still believe that there are still pockets of resistance from the Ukrainian side, and Russians will try to clear these pockets in coming days or even in coming hours. Furthermore, the Russians improved their positions to the north of the railways. So this is the situation by the end of the 30th of October, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 31st of October. So some pro-Russian sources reported that as a result of clashes, the Russians managed to secure completely the northwestern part of the city of Pokrovsk. So this territory was captured, including the school and including this residential area. So this is probably a very important progress on the ground. Now the Russians have a very strong positions in the northern part of the city of Pokrovsk. Now we see that the Russians managed to create another local cauldron for Ukrainians between these two pincers, and now Ukrainians most likely would be forced to fall back in the direction of fields where they will be met with the Russian drones. Furthermore, we have a video published from the Metallurgov Street. Here we can see a Russian soldier, or two Russian soldiers of sabotage and reconnaissance group that were moving between buildings, and how Ukrainians attacked them with FPV drone. So this episode took place also somewhere in this area, and based on this video we have adjusted the map. So once again, we believe that there are still lots of pockets of resistance. The Russians are trying to outflank them to avoid, let's say, combat with them, with the purpose to move further and deeper, with the purpose to concentrate their forces behind main Ukrainian positions. So this is the situation in the city of Pokrovsk and the Pokrovsk agglomeration. Of course, we are waiting for additional details and waiting for additional updates. Especially, we are waiting for another update from the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation. Meanwhile, we continue receiving updates of how Ukrainians are trying to counterattack Russians, and this time on the territory of the settlement by the name of Rodinskaya. So in this video, we can see Ukrainian infantry fighting carrier that answered the settlement of Rodinska from the north, and how Russians destroyed this vehicle. As of now, we are not adjusting the map because we don't know for sure when exactly this video was made. Either the video is fresh and Ukrainians counterattacked, let's say, yesterday, then of course we need to adjust the map, at least the northern part of the settlement of Rodinska or fields in Ukrainian favor, or this is an old video when Ukrainians of the 12th Special Purpose Brigade were counterattacking, and maybe this is the same armored vehicle that was attacking Russians 5 or 6 days ago in this part of the settlement. So we are waiting for additional details, because obviously we understand that if Ukrainians are planning to continue their counterattacks, now with the thing that they control the settlements of Sakhetsk and Zatishek, Ukrainians will try to counterattack the settlement of Rodinska from the north. They will try to counterattack with the purpose to restore control over the territory, and if Ukrainians are able to recapture the settlement of Rodinska, obviously the Ukrainians will be able to unblock the cauldron. So this is the logic, and this is the logic the Ukrainians are moving. Now let's move further. Let's go a bit further in the southwestern direction. Today, several sources reported that Russians, as a result of clashes and the result of fast lightning and offensive operation, managed to answer the settlement by the name of Novopavlovka. So you've just seen the changes on the ground between dates. Once again, this is the situation by the end of the 30th, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 31st. Russians answered the southern part of the settlement. The Russians managed to dig in deeper, and now they will try to continue offensive operation further with the purpose to take this settlement under complete control. This is a very important village, this is a very important settlement, because if Russians can capture this territory, they will be able to maintain the line between the settlements of Ivanovka, Novopavlovka, Muravka and Molodetska. This is going to be a very strong foothold for Russians before moving further deep inside of the Dnipro region, right after the city of Pokrovsk is being taken by Russians. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Kupiansk direction. During the previous 12 hours, we received additional changes on the ground in the area of the settlements of Konstantinovka. For example, this is the situation by the end of the 30th of October, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 31st of October. We have lots of videos where we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians along railways and in the vicinity and in the southeastern part of the city of Konstantinovka. So based on these videos, we have adjusted the map, we colored territories, and we see that the Russians continue advancing and continue expanding their positions in the southeastern part of the city of Konstantinovka. Most likely in coming days, and due to this configuration of the front line, Ukrainians would be forced to fall back from the settlement Ivanopolia, otherwise the Ukrainians would be caught in Cauldrons. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the area of the city of Siversk, and here we see that Russians are about to create another encirclement. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly along the railways from the settlement of Vyimka in the direction of the city of Siversk. Here we can see how Ukrainians of 54th Brigade were attacking Russians along the railways to the south of Siversk. So based on this video, we have adjusted the map. So this is the situation, for example, by the end of the 29th of October, this is the situation by the end of the 30th of October, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 31st of October. So now we see that Russians, as a result of this offensive operation, managed to encircle Ukrainians who are currently located in this pocket. Furthermore, the Russians managed to cut the main logistic line, the Russians have almost cut the main logistic line between the city of Siversk and the settlement of Zvanovka. So I'm not sure that Ukrainians are able to use this road because the first Russia's sabotage and reconnaissance group are very close to this territory. So we believe that if Ukrainians use this road, obviously they are risk very much, and most likely if they use this road, their losses would be very high. So which means that the settlement of Zvanovka is obviously already, let's say, encircled by Russians. Ukrainians, I'm not sure whether they have supply from the settlement of Svyatopokrovska. There are drones, obviously, of Russian forces who are flying above this territory and hunting Ukrainians. So we think that in coming days, the village of Zvanovka would be captured, and then Ukrainians will begin retreating in the northern direction from this pocket. So we are just trying to tell that the battle for the southern flank of the city of Siversk is about to be finished, and when Russians capture everything, let's say, along this line, and from this very moment we can start talking about the Kupiansk Cauldron, because from these positions Russians will be able to control almost everything. And Siversk have already lost their supply line TO513 due to clashes along this area between the cities of Liman and the village of Yampol. So the situation is very difficult. Of course, we're not talking about that this situation is going to start tomorrow or the next week, but obviously within a month everything will be changed here significantly. Now let's discuss the situation in the area of the city of Kupiansk. We have additional changes. The Russians improved their positions. I would like to remind you that yesterday the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation stated that Russians secured the settlement of Sadova. And based on this report, most of the mappers yesterday adjusted their maps. So this is the situation by the end of the 29th of October. This is the situation by the end of the 30th of October. And this is the situation by the beginning of the 31st of October. As we can see, some mappers clarified the situation around the settlement of Sadova, and based on these reports we added additional gray zone. Furthermore, during the previous 24 hours we received a first report that Russians managed to cross the river Voskol and to attack Ukrainian positions on the territory of the Zaskolya micro-district from the west. This information was provided by neutral mappers, by pro-Russian resources, and this information was confirmed by a video published by Ukrainian side. In this video we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians on the territory of the central part of the city of Kupiansk, let's say on the Ukrainian side of the Cauldron, and based on this video we have adjusted the map. So this is the situation by the end of the 30th of October, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 31st of October. So the Russians are also entering the final stage of the battle for the city of Kupiansk, which most likely will fall in Russia's hands in coming days, and after the battle for the city of Kupiansk, the Russians will continue offensive operation further in the direction of the city by the name of Kupiansk-Uzlavoy. Furthermore, during the previous 24 hours and during the previous night, we received additional videos of how Russians were attacking Ukraine and Ukrainian energy facility between the 29th and the 30th of October. So this video was published from the territory of the city by the name of Ladizhin, and here we can see the biggest power plant, thermal power plant of Ukraine. And here in front of your screens, we can see the consequences of Russian attack. The power plant was heavily damaged. Ukraine continues suffering huge problems with energy facilities and with critical infrastructure. During the next days, we are waiting for more videos and updates regarding attacks on Ukrainian facilities. And that's it for the short video. Military of a Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.